here's what I want to say, is no matter how many people are there in New York City? About?
8 million?
About 8 million. So, and there's about 20 people here. So there are 9,999,980 people who did not come tonight, who didn't get past whatever they had in front of them to be here. Now, I didn't invite all 9 million of them, but they could have somehow found out. And so one of the reasons that we're here is because we got past whatever it was that would have kept us from being here. Am I making sense? So for many of us, of course, tonight's topic is about becoming fearless. And so for many of us, what might have kept us from coming? That's an easy answer. Right, fear. You can just shout it out. I only ask easy questions. So, and I let you know if it's a trick. So, fear. Yeah, so for many people, they may not have come tonight because of fear of 10,000 things, but all of which we could probably name and maybe even will later. But we are here, and so what I would like to say is thank you, first of all, for coming. I always like to start with thank you for being willing to come here tonight. And this, for as long as you're here, to be here, present, and there's no point in coming all the way here and being here and then sitting back and going, well, let's see what this is all about, right? So I'm going to actually ask that however you came to participate, that you sort of step it up a notch. Because if I'm going to take my night and come here and be with you, which is exactly what I want to be doing, I want to make sure that this evening is of value for you so that when you leave from here, something has shifted for you. Now, specifically, the topic is around fear, so I'm going to be targeting that. But there will be lots of opportunities to talk about different things, and we're going to be doing some exercises tonight so that we can shift that experience for you. So I'm going to invite you, I always do, to however you came in, to assume that was a minute ago, and now here you are, commit to being here, being present, and creating value for yourself. Are you all in on that? Okay. Great. So here's the tricky thing about fear. How many of us just want to do things sometimes, but don't? Because you're afraid of something, right? So, of course, that's the topic. So I'm trying to weave that back in. So sometimes we just do it, just like it says, Nike says, sometimes we just do it just because we want to. And as I was coming here this evening, I was noticing all of the fears that came up in me that I wouldn't have noticed otherwise. That's why I love to do this work, because whenever I do something like this, I get to learn a lot about myself, and I can really challenge myself. And one of the things I was doing on the way down is noticing what fears were coming up. So conversation could go something like this. I wonder how many people will come. Oh no, what if not, what if 4 people show up? Oh, that's a fear. Why did I wear a dress? I'm going to be cold. I hate to be cold. And, what if I get a runner in my stockings? That's what they call them in Pittsburgh. I don't know if do they call them runners here? That's what they call them. Get a runner in my stocking, or, something. So I just kept noticing those fears. And what occurred to me was how many fears we have that we just, it's like, picture like a little minefield, right? So we walk through life and these fears are just placed around in our life, and we're so used to going around them and avoiding them and dealing with them or not dealing with them, but it's just we don't even realize that it's changing the direction. So if I'm afraid I'm going to get a runner in my stocking, it's going to choose what I want to wear, which means I may not wear what I want to wear really, which means I may worry that I don't look as good as I might have wanted to, and so it's directing my path. But I'm so used to having that moment-to-moment fear that it's like I just accept it as part of life. So I want you tonight, as we go through this conversation, like for instance, if I said, who wants to introduce yourself and tell you why you're here, maybe you didn't raise your hand just because, what do people say, the #1 fear is standing in front of, above death is standing up and speaking in front of people. So maybe that gives, well, I'll see what happens if somebody else goes first. So we let other people go first. Okay? So I would invite you tonight to watch, to think about, and listen to fears that are coming up, because that's our topic. Okay? Anyone else? Last call to introduce yourself. Tell us why you would like to, why you decided to come this evening. No? I don't want to be the last one. I'm afraid to be the last one. No? Okay. Okay, so I saw, it's always perfect. I saw this quote on Facebook today, and it doesn't specifically mention fear, but it certainly, to me, is this old, I'm taking, the moment to moment that I'm taking risks. And it stood out to me. Life is inherently risky. So number one is, the first thing we're trying to do is keep ourselves safe at all times. So we're trying to make choices that are the safer of the two, because at the very core, we want to protect ourselves, we want to look good, we want to survive, we want to make it through the day. So we avoid taking risks, except for, you can't avoid taking risks because life is inherently risky. And then all those very enlightened people out there say things like, there's only one big risk you should avoid at all costs, the risk of doing nothing, right? And that's supposed to inspire us to get out to do something. And I would say that it's likely that if you're here, you're taking risks and getting yourself out there in the world more than many people are, because you were willing to take a risk and come here. You probably look in your life and see where you're taking risks. So this is, but I thought that this was interesting, that by doing nothing, we're actually the biggest risk of all. Okay, now I'm going to erase this. Does anybody want to write down? I can send that. So fear, I have a confession to make. So I named this topic, this seminar, Becoming Fearless. And Gloria and I had a conversation about this before. She said, well, is that really even possible? And I said, no, it's really not. But if we say the name of the seminar like something like, you're going to have fear, deal with it, probably people are going to come. So if we make it Becoming Fearless, more people will come. And I think we were right, probably, about that. So this is, what if you read any of these fear books or anything, what do they say? Have the fear and do it anyway, right? So the only thing about that for me is that then I'm left feeling like, well, what if I don't do it anyway? Like, now what? So I have the fear, and I'm supposed to do it anyway, but I'm not, because I'm afraid. So where do you go from there, right? And so I did some research, both in preparation for this and because I like to learn about these things. And what I've come to realize, or what's in my agenda here, is that anytime there's something that's unknown to me, I'm naturally going to have fear. And this comes from back in the cave days, where before you went into the dark cave, you would actually want to make sure that there, you'd throw a rock in there or something, make sure that the bear or whatever was in there is going to come out. So we naturally want to be safe, and so anything we don't know is something that we would want to make sure that we're not afraid as we, that we're safe as we go to something we don't know. However, we're not in the caves anymore. Yet we still have this gut reaction to always wanting to be safe. And yet we're not really at risk, or our survival is not at stake the way it really, really was once. It just feels that way. So every day that you're out there in the world doing something that you weren't doing yesterday and pushing and risking, you're always going to come up against some amount of fear. And that's where my theory is, okay, so one possibility is feel the fear and do it anyway, except I'm not doing it. And the other possibility is get rid of the fear, and I've just told you you can't do that. So what I want to do is break down for you what I've learned about fear, and that there are a couple of types of fear. And making distinctions between those types of fears begins to allow you to have some power in the situation. So does anybody know what, there's a saying, fear stands for? Does anybody know about what that's? Anyone heard this?
Facts appearing, something appearing real. I don't know what it is.
Facts appearing real.
I don't know what he is.
I don't either, because that wasn't my saying, but it's something okay. So facts appearing real. Does anybody else have another one that they? So the one that I read, there's a couple of versions of it, but it's the same thing. It's fantasy, evidence, appearing. Is it 2 P's or 1? 2. Thank you. I really am a very good speller. Appearing real. Or false evidence. That's another one. False evidence appearing real. Okay? So, we can experience something as though it's happening, even though it's not. Our imagination is so powerful that we can actually physically experience fear, even though it's not actually happening. And that's what stops us, because if you are walking down the street and you see something happening, and it's like, let's say, let's not do that example. Let's say you're in the savannah, and you're walking down the savannah and you see a lion. You're afraid, okay? So now that's good fear, because you want to run in the other direction when it's a lion in the savannah. Don't do what those silly people do and think that they can go and pet them and stuff. Okay, or a bear or something. However, we can experience the same fear about a lion walking through the savannah, never having even seen one, constantly on the lookout for it, right? We're constantly like, there could be a lion there could be a lion there. And so we're operating in the same way, but it's not actually happening. So think about a conversation that you want to have with your boss, for instance, about getting a raise. Let's use that one. So you can imagine all kinds of experiences about what it would be like to go in and ask your boss for a raise. Who can relate to that kind of experience? What could you imagine might occur? What?
You get fired.
You could get fired, right? That's one thing we might imagine. I think we should open a window a little bit. I'm very warm. What else might happen if you ask your boss for a raise?
Rejection.
He could reject you. He could say no. He or she could say no. Yes. What else could happen? Could laugh right in your face. Oh my God! Really, you? Okay. No. You have to pull the thing. Okay. What else might happen to you if your boss? If you go in and ask your boss for a raise?
You might get the raise.
You might actually get the raise. It could happen. But notice that's not what our expectation is or what's driving us. If you are absolutely certain that you are going to get the raise before you walked in, would there be any fear associated with that? No. You'd be like, oh, I know this is a done deal. Let me go in and ask my boss for a raise, and I'll get it, okay? However, that's not what we imagine. And this is the interesting thing about human beings. In the absence of information, we make up shit. And it's usually negative shit. Like, he told you he would beep you, or beep you, so he told 20 years ago. He told you he would text you, you go out, it's a great date. He or she says, I'll text you tomorrow. And they don't text you. Now what? What goes through your head? He's a liar. What else?
Doesn't like me.
Doesn't like me.
Something happened.
Something happened. Usually something really bad happened.
They didn't make it home last night.
They didn't make it home. They're dead. Right? Now 3 days have gone by, they still haven't heard from you. I guess it wasn't as much fun as I thought it was going to be, as it was. We never think that they dropped their phone in the bathtub, or that, you know, their 9-month-old, or, you know, poured soda, or their nephew poured soda on her. So we never think about that. We just think about all the bad things. Usually, I'm not saying this is true all the time, but since that's our topic. We think about all the possible bad things that could happen. So when there's an unknown, there's this void, and then as soon as the void opens up, we want to throw all kinds of stuff in it because we want to explain it. We want to figure it out. Sometimes we don't know what the answer is. And we have to wait to find out what the answer is. But I don't want to. So we make up all this fantasy and false evidence, and then it begins to experience it. We actually experience it as real. And then, here's the problem, isn't that we did all that. We actually interact with it like it's true. You see? So now we start saying 3 times in a row when people don't text me, we don't say, good, I'm glad that guy didn't text me because I wouldn't want to be with somebody who texted me and then tell me that, tell me he's going to text me and not do that. No, we think, men are all horrible. They all do this. Or, I guess I'm just not lovable. Or we make up all this stuff about it. Right? Is it ringing true for you guys? Okay. Anything anyone would like to say about our fantasy experiences appearing real? Or to contribute to this discussion? Anyone? Okay, so fear, fantasy evidence appearing real. I'll take this a little bit off. So turns out, upon further, closer inspection, that there are actually 2 different types of fear. Okay, call them fear 1 and fear 2. Anybody read Dr. Seuss thing 1, thing 2? All the mothers and fathers. So fear, this is kind of like that. So fear 1 and fear 2. So fear 1, the distinction between the 2, so we're now actually going to do some distinctions between ways that fear could show up for you. So fear 1 will actually magnify your experience of vulnerability in a debilitating way. So you are like we were saying in terms of the filling that void with shit that's really not occurring, okay? So that's fear 1. And then fear 2 is actually something that motivates us and pushes us, creates some action because we are afraid in a different way. So for example, if we're afraid there's a lion in the savannah, and that means that we're not going to leave our tent or on, we spend thousands of dollars to go on a, what do they call this, safari, and we're out there, but now we're afraid to go out there because we're afraid the lion's going to get us. That would be fear 1. Fear 2 would be when we actually go out into the savannah and then are faced with the lion. So in that moment, we are running. So that's fear 2, which is that we're still afraid, but we're in motion, we're in action about it. So we're actually creating a positive experience out of it. Okay? So I have a couple of distinctions to illustrate this further. So fear 1 will promote panic and confusion, for instance. Okay? Whereas fear 2 is clarity and purpose. Okay? Fear 1 is about good old saving face. Okay, we don't do something because we're afraid we won't look good. Anyone here have that? Yeah? Everybody? Okay, and this is, on the other hand, is out of your comfort zone. Okay, this one is triggers avoidance of the facts. And this one heightens our awareness and perception. actions. Okay, this one wants you to stop, and this one puts you in motion. Just like we said before about the lion. And this magnifies danger. And this one calls on our capacity to deal with danger. And then finally, the good old, originates from your ego, and this is like a whole system, a whole body system response. Okay? So now the key is here, in terms of fear, and I believe with most areas in the realm of if you're making a shift in your experiential behavior, is to make a distinction. So the distinction isn't, I'm afraid, because then that's just one big ball that you're just afraid, and then it slows you down. But by being able to distinguish between fear 1, which stops you, and fear 2, which actually gets you into motion, then you'll see that there are you can have two different experiences. Anybody have something they would like to say?
What is underneath motion? Call on...
Our capacity to deal with danger.
Oh, okay.
So this one magnifies danger, but this one, there may be danger, but it calls on our capacity to deal with it. Okay, and that's another, thank you, and that's another thing when you go and read quotes about fear, like Eleanor Roosevelt says that whatever, she says, we gain strength, courage, and confidence by each experience in which we really stop to look fear in the face. She had a lot of sayings, Eleanor Roosevelt, you know, she really knows that. So, you are able to say to yourself, I have lived through this. I can take the next thing that comes along. So each time, part of the facing of the fear and the going through it and doing it is, you're going to find out it wasn't as hard as you thought it was going to be. Or you're going to learn a new skill that you didn't have before. Or you're going to, you know, on the 18th time of standing up and talking in front of people, you're not as afraid as the 3rd time as you were. Or if you've had, you know, you've asked for the 3rd time for a raise and you get some success under your belt. So each time you take action, that committed action, it will shift your experience of fear. So this is, again, that's why I say I duped you a little bit by having my little title, Becoming Fearless, because, I mean, I was just reading about that Boston Marathon guy, and they were talking about how he was an Olympic caliber boxer.
Wrestler.
Boxer.
No, boxer.
Boxer.
Boxer, yeah. And the guy said he had no fear. And I was just reading it literally as I was, you know, waiting to come in. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Just, you know, here I am about to do a fear
Fear
thing.
might have been a good thing in that moment.
Yeah. Right. Like sometimes it might be a good thing. So, and it's true because fear, I don't want to say true like the truth, but fear keeps us safe in that way, and it's a way of moderating. Except we take it to the extreme, because even when there are things we care about, even when it's things we can do, even when people say to us, oh wow, yeah, you could totally do that, or oh, he loves, you know, you're so lovable, you know, men are going to go off, you know, whatever that is, unless we're experiencing it ourselves, it's not true for us, right? So because that we keep coming up against that fear. Fear's close cousin, of course, is doubt. So sometimes we vacillate between fear, you're afraid of something, and then doubting ourselves as well. So doubt would go here into this column as well. Yes?
Is it also that fear too, the possibility is present? Possibility for something different? Or?
I would say so, sure.
Yeah.
This would be like possibility.
Whereas in fear 1, it probably will not change.
Right. It definitely will not change. I mean, something else might happen that comes along and changes it for us. Do you ever have one of those things where you were really afraid of something, So it's just after tax time, right? And you know, there's those envelopes that come, and some of them are thicker and thinner, and so they have all kinds of forms in them and things like that. You know, and I noticed my avoidance of not wanting to open them. And then it's like we push to the last minute to go get our taxes done because we're afraid what? We're going to owe money. Even though most people get refunds. Like the large majority of people get refunds. But waiting to do our taxes doesn't make us owe money any less today as it does tomorrow. In fact, sometimes we owe more money because we don't do it. And we pay the price of our penalties and things like that. So sometimes by taking action, we're creating a possibility called, I might get a refund. See, you gotta hang around me because I do the Abundance and Prosperity Workshop, so money and I get along, and I create all kinds of exciting possibilities about that. So I'm assuming that I'm getting a refund. That's just where I come from with that. I have no idea if that's true or not, but I'm making it up, so I might as well make up something that works for me. Right? I want to get a refund, make that up.